Part 4. The days of that late autumn seemed to Pat to slip by like a golden river of happiness, even after the last cricket song had been sung. Mother was keeping well. Father was jubilant over the good harvest. Cuddles was taking more interest in her lessons. The surplus kittens of the summer's crop had all found excellent homes. And there was enough of dances and beaux to satisfy Pat's not very passionate love of social life. Almost any time she would have preferred to roast apples and bandy lovely ghost stories in Judy's kitchen to going to a party. Cuddles could not understand this. She was longing for the day when she would be old enough to go to dances and have boyfriends. "I mean to have a great deal of attention," she told Judy gravely. "A few flirtations, nice ones, Judy, and then I'll fall in love sensibly."
Oh, said Judy with a twinkle. "I'm thinking that can't be done, Cuddles darlint. A sensible love affair now. It do be sounding a bit dull to me."
"Pat says she's never going to fall in love with anybody. I really believe she does want to be an old maid, Judy."
"I've been hearing girls talk that way afore now," scoffed Judy.
But she was secretly uneasy. The Silverbush girls in any generation had never been flirts, but she would have liked Pat to show a little more interest in the young men who came and went at Silverbush, and took her to dances and pictures and corn roasts and skating parties and moonlit snowshoe tramps. Pat had any number of boy friends, but friends were all they were, or seemed likely to be. Judy was quite elated when Milton Taylor of South Glen began haunting Silverbush and taking Pat out when she would go. But Pat would not go often enough to please Judy.
Oh, Patsy dear, he'll have the finest farm in South Glen some day, and the nice boy he is. It's the affectionate husband he'd be making ye."
"An affectionate husband," giggled Pat. "Oh, Judy, you're so Victorian. Affectionate husbands are out of date. We like the cavemen, don't we, Cuddles?" Cuddles and Pat exchanged grins. In spite of the difference in their ages, they were great chums, and Pat had a dreadful habit of telling Cuddles all about her beaux, what they did and what they said. Pat had a nippy tongue when she chose, and the youths in question would not have been exactly delighted if they could have overheard her. "But you don't intend to get married sometime, Pat?" Cuddles asked once. Pat shook her brown head impatiently. "Oh, sometimes, perhaps, when I have to, but not for years and years. Why, Silverbush couldn't spare me." "But if Sid brings a wife in sometime?" "Sid won't do that," cried Pat passionately. "I don't believe Sid will ever marry. You know he was in love with Betts, Cuddles. I believe he will always be faithful to her memory." "Judy says men aren't like that, and everyone says May Binney is making a dead set at him." "Sid will never marry May Binney. That's one thing I'm sure of," said Pat. The very thought made her feel cold. She and May Binney had always hated each other. Tilly Tuck was almost as much interested in Pat's affairs as was Judy. Every young man who came to Silverbush got a severe scrutiny, though he knew it not, from Tilly Tuck's little black eyes. It delighted him to listen to Pat's badinage.
"Gosh, but she knows how to handle the men," he exclaimed admiringly one night when the door closed behind Pat and Milton Taylor. "She'll make a fine wife for someone, I admit. I admire her deportment, Judy." Oh, we all do know how to be handling the men at Silverbush, Tilly Tuck," said Judy loftily.
For it was Judy and Tilly Tuck now. Judy would none of Josiah, and Mr. was too formal to keep up for long. They were excellent friends after a fashion. It seemed to Judy, as to everybody, that Tilly Tuck must have always been at Silverbush. It was impossible to believe that it was only 6 weeks since he had dropped in with his owl and his fiddle and just dog. The very cats purred louder when he came into the house. To be sure, Gentleman Tom never quite approved of him. But then, Gentleman Tom had always been a reserved, taciturn cat who never really took up with anyone but Judy. Tillytuck had his prescriptive corner and chair in the kitchen, and he was always slipping in to ask Judy to make a cup of tea for him. The fun of it, to Pat and Cuddles, was that Judy always made it, without a word of complaint. She soon discovered that Tillytuck had a sweet tooth where pies and cakes were concerned, and when she was in a good humor with him there was usually a triangle of one or a slice of the other waiting for him. To the amusement of the girls, who affected to believe that Judy was sweet on Tillytuck, much to her scorn. Sometimes she would even sit down on the other side of the stove and drink a cup of tea with him. When she felt compelled to scold him, he always soothed her with a compliment. "See how I can manage the women," he would whisper complacently to Pat. "Ain't it the pity I'm not a marrying man?" "Perhaps you may marry yet," responded Pat with a grave face, dropping a dot of red jelly like a gleaming ruby in the pale yellow center of her lemon tarts. "Maybe, when I make up my mind whether I want to take pity on Judy or not," Tillytuck answered with a wink. "There's times when I think she'd suit me. She's fond of talking, and I'm fond of listening." Judy ignored nonsense of this kind. She had, so she informed the girls, taken Tillytuck's measure once and for all. She was, however, very bitter because he never went to church. Judy thought all hired men ought to go to church. It was only respectable. If they did not go, who knew but that censorious neighbors would claim it was because they were so overworked at Silverbush during the week that they did not be having the strength to go to church on Sundays. But Tillytuck was adamantine to her arguments. "I don't approve of human hymns," he said firmly. "Nothing should be sung in churches but the Psalms of David, with maybe an occasional paraphrase on special occasions. Them's my principles, and I sticks to them. I always sing a psalm before I go to bed, and every Sunday morning I read a chapter in my Testament." "And on Whoppin' Willie's tombstone," muttered Judy, who for some mysterious reason resented Tillytuck's habit of going into the graveyard to read the said chapter. And then Christmas was drawing near, and great preparations were being made. You could hear the capitals in Tillytuck's voice when he referred to them. They were going to have a real reunion. Winnie and Frank would come, and Uncle Tom, and Aunt Edith, and Aunt Barbara from Swallowfield, and Aunt Hazel, and Uncle Rob Madison, and their 5 children, and the Bayshore great-aunts, if their rheumatism let up. In fact, it was to be what Judy called a regular Tommy Shaw, and Pat was brimful of happiness and expectation over it all. It would be the first real Christmas since she had become the virtual mistress of Silverbush. The previous one Frank had had bronchitis, so he and Winnie couldn't come. And the one before that Aunt Hazel's family had measles, and Hilary was not there for the first time in years, and it hadn't been a Christmassy Christmas at all. But everything would be different this year. And Joe expected to be home for the first Christmas since he went away. Judy's turkeys were fat as fat could be, and there was to be a goose because Dad liked goose, and a couple of ducks because Uncle Tom liked ducks. As for the rest of the bill of fare, Pat was poring over cookbooks most of her spare time. Many and old were the cookbooks of Silverbush, full of clan recipes that had stood the test of time. Most of them had nice names linked up with all kinds of people who had invented the recipes, many of them people who were dead or in far lands. It gave Pat a thrill to thumb them over. Grandmother Selby's jellied cabbage salad, Aunt Hazel's ginger cookies, Cousin Miranda's beefsteak pie, and the Bayshore pudding, Great-Grandmother Gardner's fruit cake, Old Joe Pingle's mince pie, Uncle Horace's raisin gravy. Pat never could find out who old Joe Pingle was. Nobody, not even Judy, seemed to know. But Uncle Horace had brought the recipe for raisin gravy home from his first voyage and told Judy he had killed a man for it, though nobody believed him. Judy was planning to get a new dress-up dress for the occasion. Her old one, a blue garment of very ancient vintage, was really a little old-fashioned. And besides, Patsy dear, I'd be needing it if I took a run over to old Ireland some of these long-come shorts. I can't be getting the thought out of me head ever since Cuddles put it in. Sure, and if I went, I'd want to make a real good appearance afore me old friends, not to spake of a visit to Castle Macdermot. What would you think of a nice wine colour, Patsy? They tell me it's real fashionable this fall, and maybe satin as a bit of a change from silk. Pat, although the thought of Judy going to Ireland, even if only for a visit, gave her a nasty sensation, entered heartily into the question of the new dress, and went to town with Judy to help in the selection and bully the dressmaker into making it exactly as Judy wanted it. Uncle Tom was in town that day, and they saw him dodging out of a jewelry shop, trying hastily to secrete a small, ornately wrapped parcel in his pocket before he encountered them. Not succeeding, he muttered something about having to see a man and shot down a side street. "Uncle Tom is awfully mysterious about something these days," said Pat. "What do you suppose he has been buying in that shop? I'm sure it couldn't have been anything for Aunt Edith or Aunt Barbara." Oh, Patsy dear, I'm believing your Uncle Tom has a notion of getting married. I know the signs." Pat experienced another disagreeable sensation. Change at Swallowfield was almost as bad as change at Silverbush. Uncle Tom and the aunts had always lived there, always would. Pat couldn't fit an Aunt Tom into the picture at all. "Oh, Judy, I can't think he would be so foolish. At his age, why, he's 60. "With me own eyes, Patsy. I saw him reading a letter one day and stuffing it into his pocket like mad when he caught me eye on him. And blushing. When a man of his age do be blushing, there's something queer in the wind. Do ye be minding back in the summer Cuddles telling us she was after mailing letters for him to a lady?" Pat sighed and put the disagreeable matter out of her mind. She wasn't going to have the afternoon spoiled. There were many things to buy besides Judy's satin dress. Pat loved shopping. It was so fascinating to go into the big department store and pick things to buy. Pretty things that just wanted to be taken away from all the glitter and too muchness to be made part of a real home. They had to have some new overdrapes for the dining room, and new covers for the big parlor cushions, and a set of little glass dishes to serve the chilled fruit cocktails Pat had decided on for the first course of the Christmas dinner. Judy was a little dubious about trying to put on too much style. Cocktails had a queer sound when all was said and done, and Silverbush had always been a great temperance place. "Oh, Judy, darling, it isn't that kind of cocktails at all. Just bits of fruit, and juice, and a red maraschino cherry on top. You'll love them." Judy surrendered. If Patsy wanted quality dishes, she must have them. Anyhow, Judy was sure the Binnies never opened a dinner with cocktails, and it was always well to be a few frills ahead of them. Judy enjoyed every minute of her excursion to town, and brought home a wine-colored satin of a lustre to dazzle even Castle Macdermot. It dazzled Tilly Tuck, to whom Judy proudly displayed it that night.
"A bit too voluptuous?"
Was all he would say, and got no pie that night. Tilly Tuck confessed to himself, as he took his way to the granary, that this was one of the times he had failed in tact. If he has known that Judy had in the pantry a cold roast duck and a dish of browned potato which she had intended to share with him by way of a little bite, he would have had still poorer opinion of his tact. As it was, Cuddles discovered it, and she and Pat and Judy did justice to it before they went to bed, Sid coming in at the last to pick the bones and listen to Judy's story about a lost diamond ring that had been found in a turkey's crop cut open by accident. And that do be minding me. Did I ever be telling ye of the first time your Aunt Hazel dressed a turkey for dinner when she was a slip of a girleen? Oh, there never was such a disgrace at Silverbush. It took us years to live it down. What happened, Judy? You'll never be telling her I told you? Well, then, she took a great notion to be dressing and stuffing the turkey for dinner one time, and nobody was to interfere with it. We didn't be expecting any company that day, just having the turkey for ourselves we were, not being binnies, as sells every blessed thing off the farm they can, and living on potatoes and point. But unexpected company come, quality folks from town no less, a member of Parliament and his lady wife. I did be thanking me stars we had the turkey, but what happened when your dad cut a slice off the breast, meaning to give all white mate to the lady visitor? Judy, what did happen? Don't be so mysterious. Mysterious, is it? Well, it's hating to tell it of Silverbush, I am. Not but what your dad laughed till he was sick afterwards. Well, then, to tell the worst, your Aunt Hazel had never taken out the turkey's crop, and when your dad carved off that slice, kernels of wheat and a bunch of oats fell down all over the plate. I wasn't there, of course. I never would be sitting at the table when there was quality company, and it did be well I wasn't, for I never would have been the same again. It was bad enough to hear your grandmother telling of it. She never held her head quite so high again, poor old lady. Oh, it's only something to be laughing over now, though we did be thinking it was a tragedy then. Cuddles screamed over the tale, but Pat felt a little troubled. It was a dreadful thing to have happened at Silverbush, even if it had been a quarter of a century before. Nothing worse could have been told of the Binnies. I do hope nothing disgraceful will happen at our Christmas dinner, she said anxiously. Never worry, Patsy dear. There do be no paycock's feathers in the house now. Sure, and I burnt them all the day after that. Your Uncle Horace said I was a superstitious old woman and was rail peeved because he had brought them home. So there'll be nothing to bring us bad luck, but still I'll be thankful when it's all well over. As Tilly Tuck was remarking yesterday, there do be a certain amount of nervous strain over it all. Tilly Tuck told me today that his grandfather was a pirate, said Cuddles. Also, that he was through the Halifax horror when that ship loaded with munitions blew up in the days of the war. Did you really think, Judy, that Tilly Tuck has all the adventures that he says he has? Judy's only reply was a sardonic laugh.